And here we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday night special interviews with special people. Tonight, we're joined by a local who's coming back from a trip that he's going to tell us about, Rabbi Mendy Benhiyoun. So, Rabbi, first of all, thank you for taking the time. We know Pesach is coming. Everybody is overwhelmed with all their preparations, as we're sure you are. So we really appreciate your taking the time. So before we even get started, if you would take a moment, just introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are and what you do when you're not on our Zooms, and then we'll talk about your recent trip to Eretz Yisroel.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi Epstein. Do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. My name is Mendy. We lead with my wife the Chabad in Lincoln Park. Not too far away. Just a little drive south. And yeah, just got back from Israel about a week ago. Exactly a week ago.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. We've been doing this just to give you a little background. Ever since COVID, we started doing a nightly class on Zoom, and we do an interview once a week, and we've had all kinds of interesting people on shluchim in faraway places. And like the rest of the Jewish world and the whole world, ever since October 7th, really all we are focused on is about what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. So if you would, take us back to share with us your personal experience on October 7th. Where were you when you heard what occurred? Where were you when you learned about it? And just if you would walk us through your own personal experience of October 7th, that would be a good place to start.
Sure. I was actually I had walked to my parents, who have a Chabad in the Gold Coast, not too far away, for Minyan. We weren't having a Minyan that morning, so we went. I went to daven there, and during the morning Minyan, there was an Israeli couple there who was there for the marathon, the Chicago Marathon, and they started to get reports of an attack, and they were very worried because their son was in a base right near Gaza, and they were getting very scared. But we obviously had no sense of what was going on until a close friend of ours, who's a young Israeli guy who is very part of our community, and all of a sudden he shows up at my parents' Chabad. We walks through the door, and I see on his face, all of a sudden the dots start to connect, and he pulls me to the side. He said, "Mendy, I'm going," and that was like my first moment.
Now, this guy, he lives in Israel or he lives in Chicago and he's from Israel?
He lives, excuse me, he lives in Chicago. He just finished active service about a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just after his army service and he's living in Chicago. He has a lot of Chicago family. So he was living here. We became close friends. And he said, I came to say goodbye. He said, I've been looking all over the city. I've been at your house since 8 a.m. knocking on your doors. I said, gosh, they sleep, but why are they sleeping in? It's Shabbos. He said, I figured out you maybe by your parents, but he said I wanted to come say goodbye before I go. And you start to realize the scale, the awesomeness of the moment.
So can you tell us about this guy for a minute? So what happened? Did he go to Eretz Yisrael? Where is he?
We went, had a l'chaim in the sukkah, and obviously we're after Yom Tov. We were in touch with him. He was from the first vehicles that went into Gaza. His unit was the first ones that went in.
Wow.
And he was there for about 2.5 months.
Wow.
In Gaza. Somehow he had his phone, so we had great coverage throughout. He was in Shifa Hospital. He was
Is he back in Chicago?
He is now back in Chicago.
So we got to get him on. We got to have him on. Will you ask him for us?
100%.
Oh, wow. Okay, we got next Tuesday's guest. Rabbi Benhiyoun, you are the best paying it forward. We already got next Tuesday's guest. Look at that, a guy mamish back from service. Okay, let's take us back to your story. So you hear about this, you learn about it from this friend of yours. He's off. And I mean, everybody, of course, is overwhelmed. What prompted this particular trip? And can you walk us through some of the itinerary, where you went and who you saw and what you did?
For sure. So just give me a moment here. Um, so what prompted this trip? Everyone, as you mentioned before, everyone is constantly saying, thinking about Israel. You check the news multiple times an hour maybe. We're always, should I go? Should I not go? How could I go? And obviously in our community, as a community, everyone has always been talking about it, that they want to go. Um, but it took one person in our community who basically said, guys, I'm not waiting. I booked tickets, and whoever wants to come with me is welcome, but we're going.
So how many
So
people did that turn out to be?
so that was it. So it started with me, and it started with him, me, and then another community member who has an organization for lone soldiers. He joined as well, and he led his own sort of group. So we had like two groups in one, and he had about 6 or 7 people join from all around the country, and we ended up having about 4 people. My brother came from New York, and then his brother came from Miami.
Your brother's famous.
So
We had him on our Tuesday nights a couple of weeks ago.
exactly. So we had a total of about 10 people or so, 10
Wow.
people that were.
Okay, so walk us through some of the logistics because we understand that it's not so simple. You just don't go on kayak and book a flight to Israel. How did that come together?
So that is exactly the myth that we want to break.
Okay,
If there's
good.
one thing that we said we're going to go, we're the first, we're going to scout it out, and then we'll bring back the news and tell people
So you were
what could be
correcting
done.
this mistake of the spies. You're coming back with an
Correct.
encouraging report.
We're coming back with a report to say you don't need a large group, you don't need an armed guard with you the entire time. You don't need Iron Dome in your backpack. You can book a flight right on the internet, land in Israel, rent a car, get an Airbnb, get some falafel, daven, meet a soldier, hug somebody on the street, and you will feel that you did something. I
Wow.
promise you that just the first person you meet, you give them a hug, and it's meaningful.
Wow.
And you could do that. Everyone could do that. You should do that. And so that's in terms of the technical stuff. It was not rocket science.
So give us a little bit of where you
Hmm.
went, who you saw, what you did. Give us a little bit of that if you could.
Sure. So we got to Israel. We were there for a week, and we split our time. We had 2 days in Jerusalem, 2 days in Tzfat, and then 2 days in Tel Aviv.
And how were your days
I don't
filled?
know
What
what.
what what were your what was your like itinerary look like? You just sort of wandered around hugging people?
So our itinerary was very busy. We slept about 4 hours a night. We're constantly on the road. We started off, we went straight, we arrived 8 a.m. and we didn't go to sleep till 1 a.m. So
Wow.
we didn't take any rest. We went straight to Tel HaShomer Hospital with wounded soldiers. We heard incredible stories. I mean, you just walk in again. There was no escort. There was
You just
no
show up. Hi, I'm here to
time.
visit
You
soldiers.
walk into the hospital, and
And
they
what
have
what would you recommend if somebody's listening and they're not fluent in Hebrew? Could they still feel that they
it.
can move
They
around?
all speak in English. They all speak in English. They prefer English, and you bring pizza, you
Mhm.
bring a pack of cigarettes, whatever they like.
But don't bring cigarettes into hospitals.
And well, it's outside. They're all sitting on this porch, and that's what they're doing. but they literally told us part of their therapy regimen is to share their story. And you literally could sit there for hours, one soldier after the next. One of them was explaining to us how his arm was blown off and he was
Eesh.
holding it in his hand, and until he got back to the chopper, holding it the entire time with him until they put it back on. Then they were about to take off amputate his leg. And his mother, after 3 or 4 surgeries, told the doctor, "I'm sorry, but you're not giving up. My son is going to have a leg. You're not taking it off." And because of how strong she was, they tried one more time and they ended up taking bone from somewhere and tissue from somewhere. And if you look at him, I mean, what you see there is just incredible. He has like half a leg and it's trying to recuperate. You're seeing actual, guys who were there 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, who are, um, who have stories to share. So we went to Tel HaShomer Hospital. We visited them. They're extremely, extremely appreciative um, of the visits and to share their stories. We visited another lone soldier home and spoke to some of the soldiers. They actually asked us not to speak to the soldiers because some of them are going through, could have trauma or therapy, and they asked us just to, they know that we're there, and so that's where we were. Obviously, we went to Yerushalayim, we davened by the Kotel. The next day, we went to the
How did you get
Yahalom.
around? You just drove yourselves, or you knew where to go, or
Well,
GPS,
we had
or
my brother who had been there before, and
okay,
he said, rent a car, just get all over the place, it's fine. So, and that's what it was. It was perfect. We
wow.
went to we had an Airbnb in Yerushalayim. Um, the next day we went to a base called Yahalom. It is we got to see all the cool gadgets, how they blow up the tunnels. We got to go into Israel's they actually built replicas of underground terror tunnels from Gaza, terror tunnels from Hezbollah. We got guided tours throughout these tunnels to see how it is. It was an incredible base to visit. Then we went to the south. We obviously visited the Nova Festival site. We visited some of the local schools, local cities nearby Gaza. There's actually one kibbutz that wasn't, somehow Hamas didn't come in, and they showed us how they're trying to jumpstart school, even though there's no school at all in the entire area, but they're trying to encourage families to come back to the south. And they're like showing us how in the kitchen they made a pre-1A, and how in that in the gathering area they made a first grade. They're trying to basically get people to feel comfortable coming back home. And you ask them, like, what's the problem? Why aren't people coming back home? Why isn't school starting? And the answer is, well, you could see Khan Yunis from first grade. So that was their answer. You actually could see it, and families um, are struggling to say we can come back home. So we went there. We met with some of the hostage families, and then we did a big barbecue for about 400 soldiers at a base called Zikim, which is right on the border with Gaza, and it's right on the sea. So this was one of the bases that was severely attacked on October 7th. There was a really big battle that took place, and thank God they didn't take over the base. But going around the base, you could see the bullet holes, and one of the caterers were asking me to schlep some of the tables for the barbecue, and he's like, "Hey, look here! You could see a mortar shell fell into this table as we're putting hot dogs on the same table." And but we were there for a few hours, and we got to. I think the most incredible was a older man. I see, he's in full gear, and he says, "Yeah, I have 6 grandchildren. I live nearby. I'm 20 years over my reserve duty age limit, but I volunteer." And he said, on October 7th, I put my family and my grandchildren in the shelter. I took my gun and I went to fight for 3 days. I mean, you're looking at a grandpa. He could have been my grandpa. and he's there with all the young soldiers on the line to get a burger, and he was on his way. He's very well possibly going back in his second reserve duty since the beginning of the war. So that was incredible. And we
So,
went.
yeah, I'm sorry, keep going.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what would you say is the mood of the people in Israel now, and how did it affect you? Like, were you expecting it to be very morose and glum and sad and tragic, or and were you surprised by the people? And what was your emotional experience? What were you anticipating, and what did it turn out to be?
I had to say, I sort of thought that it would be. I actually thought that there would be like, oh, the Americans are here. Yeah, that's so nice. You guys are always around and we're so happy. Oh, you guys are from Chicago. Oh, yesterday somebody came from, oh, that's so. I thought it would be like, oh, you guys just came and like almost needing to prove our why we're there.
Hmm.
And it actually was the opposite. It was the airport was empty, Jerusalem is empty. Tzfat, we visited Tzfat. The entire artist quarter of Tzfat is shut down. Since October 7th, we sat down for Shabbos dinner, and my sister, who has a Chabad there, tells me, "Oh, this is the artist. Her gallery is across the street." I said, "Can we visit?" And she said, "Oh no, I haven't painted anything since October 7th. We're just shut down." I mean, this is 6 months. This is not 2 weeks. On Sunday we went. There was one shop in the entire artist quarter to buy, a souvenir. And he told us, he said it used to be 1,000 people a day, 2,000 people a day. It's tourism. And he said, you may be the first person that came by today. So people are hurting. Who goes, there are no trips going to Tzfat to visit but people that rely on tourism to support themselves are hurting very badly. So that was that was one thing that I realized was the soldiers throughout the barbecues kept on coming over to me and saying, I just want to let you know how meaningful it is that you are here.
Yes.
We really appreciate it. And I thought it wasn't cliche the way that they were saying it. So um that's sort of the feeling. The feeling was that you make a difference by being there, and they don't take it for granted. So that was an important
It
lesson.
sounds like the trip not only was meaningful to you, but as you said, it was so meaningful to the people there. And to hear about this commitment and the resilience of all of Am Yisrael for Achenu B'nai Yisrael. Okay, we're gonna. If anybody wants to specifically unmute and jump in with a question, otherwise we're gonna let the rabbi get back to getting ready for Pesach. And reminder: just no class tomorrow or Thursday. I have weddings both nights, thank God. So happy things. Rabbi Benhiyoun, thank you for what you did, for going to Eretz Yisrael, representing the broader Chicago community. Thank you for taking some time to share it with us. Really appreciate it. And we definitely want to speak to your friend. So if you get a chance, ask him if he would come on a Tuesday night, either before Pesach or after Pesach. We would love to hear it. And otherwise, we'll say goodnight. Thank you for spending time with us. Really, really appreciate it. And you really painted a vivid picture of what life is like in Am Yisrael. Good night.
Thank you. Good Yom Tov.
Good Yontif, good Yontif.